You know, it wasn't that long ago that the entire world of education got turned upside down, right? Almost overnight, we were thrown into this massive, kind of chaotic digital experiment, and it left all of us asking one huge question. Were we actually ready for it?
I mean, just think back to that moment for a second. Remember that? The school hallways went silent. Everyone was scrambling for laptops, for Wi-Fi codes, and suddenly the classroom wasn't a room anymore, it was just a grid of faces on a screen. We were all thrown into the deep end, weren't we? Just completely uncharted territory.
And that whole experience, it was basically the biggest stress test our schools have ever faced. And well, it showed some major cracks in the foundation. It became painfully clear that a lot of our education systems just weren't designed for this. They weren't built for a world where the classroom had to fit inside a computer.
But here's the thing, it wasn't just about bad internet connections or not having enough tablets to go around. No, this was a deeply human test. And what it did was take all those inequalities that were already simmering under the surface, and it just cranked up the heat. The students who were already struggling, they got hit the hardest, by far.
Okay, so if we're going to figure out where to go from here, we have to get really honest about what that stress test revealed. We need to look under the hood and see what broke, right? What were the fundamental weaknesses that this whole crisis brought to light?
And a big part of that is this term we hear all the time, the digital divide. But you know what? We usually think about it in a super simple way. Like, it's just about who has a laptop and who doesn't. But the real story is, well, it's a lot messier and a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's not just one gap. The experts in this report say it's actually 3 different gaps all layered on top of each other. And each layer is its own special kind of challenge when it comes to making sure every kid has a fair shot.
So the first layer, this is the one we all know. It's the access divide. Pretty straightforward, right? It's about having the stuff, the device, the right software, and a decent internet connection that doesn't drop out every 5 minutes. This is like the tickets you need just to get in the door.
Okay, but let's say you've got the ticket. You have the laptop. That's not the end of the story. Knowing how to actually use that technology for learning, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's the second layer, the usability divide. This is all about the skills for students and teachers to make these tools actually work for education, not against it.
And then we get to the third, and maybe the most important layer of all, the utility divide. This one's deep. It's not about having a laptop or even knowing how to use it. It's about the why. Does the school as a whole have a vision, a real strategy for using technology to do something amazing? It's the difference between just sticking a worksheet on a screen and truly using tech to empower kids and change how we think about learning.
So once you see these 3 divides, suddenly the path forward starts to get a lot clearer. It's not just about buying more computers, it's about a whole new way of thinking. And that brings us to the big idea here, the hybrid school. It's a model designed specifically to tackle these challenges head-on, aiming for something that's both super flexible and genuinely fair.
All right, so what in the world is a hybrid school? Well, at its heart, it's pretty simple. It's a mix. You take the best of old-school in-person teaching and you combine it with learning that happens online, in virtual spaces. And here's the cool part. That virtual learning can happen anywhere. It basically blows the walls off the traditional classroom.
The whole idea is to get the best of both worlds, literally. You keep all that great stuff from being together in a room, the energy, the teamwork, that sense of community, but you also bring in what's awesome about online learning. You know, letting students work at their own pace, giving them more independence, and offering way more flexibility. It's all about being smart and using the right tool for the job.
And when you nail this, man, the possibilities are huge. You can actually start to personalize education for each kid. You empower them to manage their own learning, which builds those critical thinking skills we're always talking about. And maybe the biggest win of all, it can be a massive step forward for making education more equitable for everyone.
Okay, so this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky theory. That's the important part. There's an actual blueprint for how to do this. A really detailed 8-point plan that's all about taking this big vision and making it real, school by school.
And this whole strategy rests on 2 big pillars. Think of it like a balancing act. On one side, everything is about improving the quality of education and making real, transformative change. And on the other side, just as important, is making sure everything is fair, equitable, and inclusive. You can't have one without the other. They have to grow together.
So what does that look like on the ground? Well, it means we stop just handing out digital worksheets and start designing real, meaningful projects. It means we have to talk about digital wellness and safety from the get-go. And get this, it's about training everyone, teachers, students, and even their families. It's also about rethinking how we grade, moving towards different kinds of assessment that give students constant, useful feedback.
Now, a change this big can't be done by schools alone. It has to be a partnership. You've got the big education authorities. Their job is to handle the infrastructure, right? Make sure everyone has devices, connectivity, the big picture stuff. But then it's up to the individual schools to take that framework and really make it their own, customizing it for their students and their community. It's this awesome top-down, bottom-up approach where everyone has a crucial part to play.
Because at the end of the day, after all the talk about plans and pillars and technology, it all boils down to something really simple. This is about people, not pixels.
Look, the point was never just to give every kid a device. That's missing the forest for the trees. The technology is just a tool. The real goal, the big prize, is to completely change how we teach and how we learn. It's about shifting the entire culture of the classroom.
There's a great line in the report that puts it perfectly. It says, this is more about adaptive change than technical change. And what that means is, it's about changing hearts and minds, not just changing hardware. It's about building new habits, new ways of connecting. And yeah, that's way harder than just buying a bunch of new software, but it's also so much more powerful.
And here's the really cool paradox in all of this. When we use technology in a smart way to handle the boring, routine stuff, it doesn't make teachers obsolete. Just the opposite. It actually frees them up. It gives them more time to do the things only a human can do. Mentor, inspire, connect, and guide. It lets them be more human.
So, look, the question for the future isn't if we're going to use technology in schools. That ship has sailed. The real question, the one we all need to be asking, is how. How do we build an education system that uses all this amazing tech to actually become more personal, more fair, and, believe it or not, more human?